As I always say, is there's no top to the mountain, just keep climbing.
Yeah. And you'll spiral around again.
Yeah. Hey, this is James Walker with Surfing the Change, Conscious Community in Action. And today we have Weston Hudson coming to us from, where are you at? California, brother?
Los Angeles.
All right. Well, as always, I always start off with a little backdrop on who you are, how'd you get into the profession that you do, and a little bit about the journey you've been on. So without further ado, Weston.
Yeah, so it wasn't planned, but just like pretty much like anything in life. I had a whole different vision for different things, and basically I'm a spiritual healer, and that pathway became from my own healing. So it was more like, I think there was always a commonality of teaching because I had taught for Apple Computers, I had taught for Musicians Institute, tennis teaching. I'd worked for a company that was big teaching. So it was kind of like teaching was always around. And then doing the healing journey, it was like the two were trying to merge. And then grow.
So what happened with your health that it spun you into? Because that's exactly how I got into. I didn't choose the healing world either. It chose me, as like I like to say. But what was it that came up that created this life-changing moment for you?
Well, I didn't know I had injuries. I was a tennis player growing up, and I had injuries that had nothing to do with really tennis. So there was a lot of like broken bones and things like that, but that wasn't really, I guess the big wake up was when I was 17. I had set a goal for tennis. I had reached that goal, and then I think a gloom and an emptiness started to set in that I wasn't aware of. And I got an illness called ITP, and that's basically the spleen kills the platelets. Or it's like it's an autoimmune thing, so it's like overactive, killing all the platelets. So my platelets dropped really low. When they first initially discovered it, they thought it was leukemia. So I was rushed to the cancer center. Um, and to be honest, I was just kind of checked out, and my mom was more concerned than I was.
Mhm.
Um, but something started happening. I started being really intuitively linked to, because I had to go every like day or two to get my blood drawn to make sure that because they put me on prednisone.
Okay. Yeah.
So they were like, is this going to correct? And so I'd have to go every day. And my mom would ask me when we ride the elevator, what are your levels at? And I would be able to guess what my levels were.
Nice.
Now, going through the healing journey, it was like, was I changing the levels in my body, or was I intuitively reading the future or the machine of what was going to happen? But it made me understand that there was an intuition or a psychic premonition, something going on there. Um, with that, there's like a gift coming online along the same time as, hey, I'm really off the rails with my health.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to turn this? Because obviously you look very healthy right now.
Well, yeah, this was when I was 17, so I'm almost 47, so this is 30 years ago.
Nice.
But it didn't take that long. It probably took about 6 months because they weren't sure, is the prednisone going to work? Because the doctor gave me three options when I went in. He was like, the first option is we put you on the steroid. Second option is we do a blood transfusion. And the third option is we take out your spleen. And
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I don't want to go on the journey of the two other ones.
Mhm.
I'll just take the prednisone and hopefully that works. And it worked. It was a brutal medicine because they put me on a really high dose. So I went through a lot of physical changes, especially as a 17-year-old. Um,
With because you were already going through massive changes anyways with your adolescence.
yeah, puberty and, growing. Yeah. So,
Okay.
and I
So
got arrested at the same moment.
what's that?
I got arrested at the same basically
Same
time.
time period?
Well, yeah, like within a day or two. It was just for a minor in possession of alcohol.
Oh,
But it was just kind of a big wake up call. Like everything was happening at once to say, you need to wake up, you know.
right.
Yeah.
So what did you dive down into first? What was your first choice?
Well, I still stayed asleep after that, and I went to school, and then I was going to school for computer science, and then I was like, I want to be more creative. And so I pivoted into acting, and I moved from Texas to Los Angeles to become an actor. And then when I was in acting class one day, the teacher said, he quoted Dustin Hoffman and said, "We must be pretty much messed up as actors to want all these people to file into a little black box and watch our head projected 40 feet tall."
Mhm.
And it made me go, "Why am I really doing this?" And there was just kind of an inkling of maybe that same intuitive voice saying, "You're doing this because you want your dad's love." And I didn't like that I wasn't completely aligned or passionate about what I was doing. And so I just said, okay, I'm open to seeing what that means.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of, I think you may know this, it's like once you decide that the universe supports you in terms of like law of attraction, it starts drawing in the teachers, the guides, the healers,
Yeah.
the books, whatever it needs to bring across your
So
pathway.
that was the first spark, is you having this self-realization of why you were doing the acting and what you were doing for your.
100%. It was not, I mean, there was a few other moments in acting class, like a moment that I cried about my mom, but because acting can be very therapeutic and it can bring up things.
Okay.
And there was so much starting to come up that I was like, I don't think I'm actually really that interested in acting. I think I'm more interested in what's going on below. Um,
Underneath the surface.
yeah. And then I was hooked. I was like, let's go. Um, yeah.
Let's do it.
I didn't know what I was signing up for.
I know we didn't read the fine print either here. I tell you.
That's you see the neon lights. You're like, let's go for healing.
Yeah. Yeah. What a journey it is. So that's why we have you here today. I want to hear, like, what has your life been like as you got into this? It's never dull. There's usually so many experiences spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically that we go through on this journey of awakening. Ups and downs always seem to be the highlights.
Yeah.
It's, I call testing the metal, and that fire really burns it out. And there's a process that we go through. So how has your journey been?
Um, I mean, I'm a storyteller, so I would take forever because I would sit here and probably tell you way too much about it. I guess the highlight reel would be I realized that acting wasn't authentic, and then I pivoted into music, and music became more cathartic in the way that I could get more tapped into what I wanted to express. It felt more direct than acting versus reading someone else's lines. At least the songs could become more in line with what I wanted to say. Um, but that was more of an expression journey. And then I started to realize that I was kind of writing my songs in this kind of messiah complex. Like, oh, it's going to be my songs that change the world kind of thing.
All right.
And so it was like I had to step back from that and say, well, not that, I mean, I still love music and I think it's a powerful medium. I think I just was still searching for how do I authentically show up and use my gifts, knowing that music is one gift, but I was so identified with that as being like a career or a identity of I'm a rock star. I need to go like be that
Mhm.
versus like what's really trying to happen. Um, and surrendering to that, which is more of the healing journey.
I mean, because I love music, I think music really reaches out to quite a broad audience, and depending on the lyrics and the vibe that you're throwing,
Yeah,
it's still very powerful.
yeah, yeah. And it will still be a part of I call myself a healing artist.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's working with a person directly and using that intuition that I get to provide like a message for them, or putting it into a song that becomes a message. Or I also do these spiritual prayers that I put out every Wednesday on YouTube that there's a message in that. So it made me soften the like such the concrete identity structure to be like, you just have to be all of that. And same with comedy. I've always like wanted to do some like stand-up comedy because I think that that's very healing in a way too, because you put people in a room and you get to talk about subjects that everyone knows as truth. And
So have you done stand up then?
I haven't. I got to do that.
All right, all right, man with many talents. So continue on. You did the music, and then I heard you in the beginning said that you've been in the healing arts. So what was it? What kind of practices did you dive into that really was your springboard, or was it mostly lots of self-reflection and meditation and diving inward, or
It,
both? It's probably both.
it just kept being layered. So there was the earnest quest to be like, I have to heal myself. And I think in the beginning, maybe or for me, I was more private. So it was like I would listen to music for lyrics as a catharsis, cathartic release, or I would read books because I could do that in private. And then it wasn't until later that I was like, I need to open up to healers. And the minute I did that, then it was like healers were just showing up like all around me. And so then it could be someone that would be a spiritual practitioner or a shaman or a therapist or guidance counselor. I mean, it would come in so many different forms. And I was more of a high octane, like, let me just go get this really powerful download to wake up that new part of myself. And then I'll go study it on my own and then come back for another kind of power hit versus like being in therapy for 5 years or something.
Right, right, right. So you were trying multiple modalities out there and just trying to find what was it that you were
Yeah.
resonating to, or was it all, if I'm hearing you correctly, it was all kind of important and it all led to your awakening?
Yeah. Well, for example, I was in a romantic relationship once and there was a lot of problems and we were kind of trying to to go get our stuff together to go to Coachella. And there was just something about going to Coachella and being in the desert that I was like, I kind of like in the vein in the way of Jesus. Like if I go to the desert, maybe something will happen.
Right.
And so we get on the freeway, and this is leaving LA to go out to Indio, which is like a little over 2 hour drive, and the 10 freeway was just stopped. And I've lived in LA for whatever, now 25 years, 27 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd never seen traffic to this day like that. And it was just kind of, what are we doing? So we went 60 miles in 6 hours. And then we realized we weren't even going to make that night's show, like the artists that were playing, like Bjork was playing
Mm-hmm.
that year. And so we just pulled off and got a hotel room. And then her and I had an interaction there. And I realized, like, man, I really don't know how to love. And I was praying, like, please show me how to love. She told me later she was in the bathroom praying for the same thing. And the next morning we wake up and we go downstairs to the lobby and they had like make your own waffles. And she like loved that kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, we could get some waffles. And she's like, no, no, I want Starbucks. And I was like, huh? Like you never pass up waffles. She's like, no, I don't want it. We're going to Starbucks. We go into Starbucks. She also goes, I'm paying, go over there. And while I'm waiting, I look over and see this man like working on this giant computer in Starbucks. And I just left Apple and I was really identified with Apple. So my ego was really like, I'm an Apple guy and he was using a Dell. And so I kind of went over there in like a little bit of a combative way to be like, hey, Apple's better than Dell. And I said, oh, I see you're using this Dell. And he's like, yeah, and I go, well, I'm more of an Apple guy myself. And he goes, well, Apple's a good machine, but they don't make like a 17-inch or whatever it was, 20-inch portable display. And I was like, you're correct, they don't. And we got in this conversation and he ended up being this really mystical, magical guy. And he unlocked some things for me around love because I had prayed for that. So I feel like that's some of the most authentic way to draw someone into your life is you pray for it and then that healer will show up and it's who you're looking for.
It's divine.
It's real clean. Yeah, it's real pure. And
All right. So did you make it to Coachella?
yeah, the next day.
Okay. All right.
But that day, we woke up at Starbucks. We actually talked to him for like 2 hours,
Oh, really?
and then finally, but Coachella doesn't really get going until the evening. So
Right.
yeah, we could be with him. I mean, he blew our minds and probably our hearts, and then we went on. Yeah.
So love, let's let's go there because I've in the last 6 weeks have done a deep dive into that one. Um, and it's, I believe, the root, the power of love to really shifting all the things that you don't want. It just kind of shifts out of
Mhm.
your energy. And then all of a sudden, things start manifesting rather quickly.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear your experience with, after saying your prayer for love, how you want to know love. What what happened to you after the mystic?
A very, very wild ride. Um, I mean, Coachella was fine, whatever. Red Hot Chili Peppers played, and
Ooh, I love me really. I love chili peppers.
yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. Then I get back and I just feel things moving around energetically. I mean, depending how deep you want to go. So this is
Yeah, we want to go deep, bro. I want to go as deep in the ocean as you want to go.
okay. So basically, I didn't know what was happening. I just started getting like a lot of energy moving. Um, and I started almost like hallucinating in a way. And we actually called him because he had given us the business card, and he was like, "You might just want to try like EFT, like tapping,
Mhm.
emotional freedom technique."
Yeah.
And I tried it, and it really was. I was like, "This is too high octane of energy that's trying to come through me here." And so me and the girl that I was dating, we went for a hike, and I felt like I was dying. Like I was like, I literally think I'm dead, like I'm crossing over, because my brain couldn't quite track
Mhm.
what was happening. Now I know what was happening, but back then I was like, what's going on?
Mhm.
And we were hiking up Runyon Canyon in Los Angeles, and people wouldn't look at me in the eyes. And I thought, are they like ghosts, or is she leading me up this mountain to like this is where I die and I'm supposed to like jump off the cliff and all this? That sounds crazy. But what was happening was deep emotional um, woundedness was starting to surface, and my brain didn't know how to assimilate all of that energy, like emotion, energy, and motion. Like I didn't know, and so it went on for 2 days. And to make a long story short, what ended up happening was I started getting very angry. Um, and it was almost like through that anger, I was starting to reclaim my power. Like there's a new electricity happening that had been stuffed down. And then from anger, I feel like you go through this big anger release and then you go into tears. And so I went into tears and I fell on the floor with this girl, and she's like, "Why are you crying?" And I said, I didn't ever want to be weak because I didn't want my dad to see that he had the power over me. Like if I cried, then he could see that he actually influenced me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he
That
abused
he's
that.
dominating
Yeah.
and he
I didn't
won.
know
And
that.
that,
Yeah.
that then he won.
Yeah. Exactly. If I stayed stoic and tough, then nobody wins, loses. It's just no, nobody's going to hold me down. But if I get vulnerable and cry, now I can actually see, well, the only reason I'm crying is because there actually is a wound there, and he could be the cause of that wound, right? I didn't know that at the time, but I'm just crying because that was my truth in the moment was, you know, um, uh, he has the power to hurt me because I loved him, and therefore betrayal or whatever you want to call that, you know. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the wake up then.
Right.
Then it kept going, and then she didn't know what to do for me. We ended up calling my sister, and my sister said, I just think you're emotional. Like, I think you need to have a release. And so her idea was to get me a massage.
Mhm.
So we were driving down to get to the massage, and I started having the anger erupt from me again. And
So is this all uncontrollable? I mean, like just pouring out of you, like the mystic kind of pulled the plug on you and it was just all draining out now.
yeah, because like I said before I got sick, I was an athlete, so it was either avoiding myself on the tennis court or with my friends. So I'm just going, 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 and I'm avoiding all of this. And then you can make up your new identity, like, oh, I'm a computer science student, then I'm an actor, then I'm a musician. And it was now that I'm faced with romantic love, the romantic love was asking me to go deeper. And then yes, when he pulled the plug, it's like, poof, like it's just it's stuff
Right.
that I suppressed for so long that it's like water in a dam. The minute you put a crack in the dam, It's coming. Like,
It burst.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love it. And what's cool is you went from the anger down into the sorrow, which is the stages to love.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can bypass some of the anger if you go and are that vulnerable to
Mhm.
get into the sorrow. Um, but anger is really powerful and it's informative. So
Very much so. I think grieving the so I'm going to see if you've tried this before, but when we have a painful moment, a grief or a sorrow, or where the heart is just exhilarating in pain, right? Um, there's an alchemical moment that if you feel that pain with love, knowing that it is the absence or the opposite of love, but by holding to the thought and the feeling, if you're not even feeling the love and you're feeling this tremendous pain in your heart, sadness, whatever, that it can transform. And I've been consistently working on that for 6 weeks and have had life changing radical love, radical change is what I'll say. And I've been doing this for over 30 years now, but I just had a very strong relationship and we broke up anyways, it was the most exhilarating pain. And so I sat in it and I felt it and I went deep into it and would meditate on divine love, immaculate love, all of these different flavors of this abundant love. I mean, just radiating love. And I've found that there's this process, this alchemical process that's going on that started changing everything in my world, like radically. Have you done depths of this transformative form of love?
yeah, so what happened was, I mean, there's more of how it kept unfolding, and then I finally
Mm-hmm.
had to arrive because we went on for another 6 months, her and I.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I gained weight. I wasn't fully there emotionally. And then after we broke up, I got into yoga, and the yoga started accessing some of the trauma in my body. And it kept going. And then what ended up happening is I manifested another woman that was identical to her.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So if we don't learn the lesson, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. And so we started to get entangled. It started showing the same signs of that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, I'm not doing this again. Like,
Right.
so I took a stand there. And then what happened, because we were on a phone call and she was kind of, because I'm just like, I also believe that truth is synonymous with love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, love will hold any truth, right? Like shame or whatever you feel unworthy about, love will just, we don't care that that's your truth. We still love you. Unconditional love will hold that truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jesus said, I'm the truth, I am the way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like basically I got to that point and I was like, you know, we were on this phone call and she was kind of trying to manipulate me a little bit. And then I was kind of like calling her on some stuff and she wouldn't own it. And we kind of got in a little fight and she hung up. And I just sat there, I said, I don't want to do this again. And I just started like this it was almost like a mantra was coming through me like how do I love? Like I don't understand love. Like I don't understand how to love. And this voice was like, do you want to know? And I said, yes. And then I just started saying, Father, please tell me what happened. Father, please tell me what happened. And there was like these quick flashes of a painting that I had done. I channeled this painting once when I was in a coffee shop, and I actually thought it was a picture of my sister, and then I realized it was a picture of me, and it was very kind of graphic. And I'd written, "Father, please tell me what had happened or what happened." And one of the healers that I saw one time, I was talking about my father, and he said, "Please don't call him your father. You need to call him your dad." Because when you refer to him as father, you kind of give him this grand authority, and he's not your father. He's just a brother on the path with you. So he kind of like equalized us as humans. And so that popped into my mind. Father, please tell me what happened. I was like, I don't need to go to my father to ask what happened because he's never going to tell me. I need to go to the ultimate father. And so I said, Father, please show me what happened. And then I relived my trauma. Fell to the ground in a fetal position, crying. And then like all these angels were around me. And it was like there was no time. Like it was almost like I was reliving the same moment and they were the angels that were there then
Mhm.
and now, or at that point, it was 2009, but
Right.
and they were showing me what true love felt like, and it was almost like where my fall from grace was, like when I closed my heart, at 5 years old.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but here I am, like 30 years old, a grown man. Um, so that was when I felt that like full unconditional love for myself, letting I wasn't fully healed with my dad. I eventually was able to forgive him and sit with him and talk to him about it. Um, but it really showed me the power of surrender, the power of letting go and letting a higher knowing heal, like where the true healing comes from. And whether you want to call that love or a being or a presence or um, I don't like to give it a name. I'm not a very religious person. I'm spiritual, but even that's a label. But
That's kind of like the Tao. As soon as you call it the Tao, it's no longer the Tao.
yeah, yeah.
So, fast forward, what is your current profession right now?
So I'm transitioning. I still do some tennis coaching, but I'm transitioning into fully. Um, I've just released an online course to take people through kind of the beginnings of this process. Hey, here's how you watch your mind. Here's how you observe your thoughts and your energy, and then here's ultimately the vision that you want, but you can't get to because of these blocks. And that could be a vision in romance, a vision in career, finances, health,
Okay.
what
So, what's the name of this?
shift to shine.
Shift to Shine. Is this a shifttoshine.com?
No, shift and shine. Sorry, shift and shine. And the easiest way to get there is westonhudson.com/shift.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that again at the end just to let people know if they're interested in checking out what you're putting up onto the internet. So
It's a,
please give us a little detail on how this process works. It sounds like this is your life's work that you're bringing out.
yeah, I've spent the last 6 months building. I put my heart and soul because I was a graphic designer and a web designer before when I was working at Apple and after. So I made everything, from the workbook. I wanted it to look beautiful. I wanted people to go through and have this experience of feeling really safe. I wanted it to function really well so there was no confusion. So it's on the online platform and you join up and you not only watch videos and do the workbook, but then at the end of the week we have group calls to start to go deeper into the material that we learned through that week. And it lasts for 6 weeks. And then you also get private calls to go deeper than the group.
Okay. So you get a private one-on-one with you for what, an hour, I'm guessing?
Or two. So you'll do one at the midpoint and one at the end.
Okay.
Because the stuff will start coming up, right? Yeah.
Right. It certainly does. All right. So with your platform, you mentioned with the first week is about, you discuss which topic first, the first week of the,
So the first week, in the first week is a life inquiry. So basically, you go through all 10 areas of your life, and you're
uh,
trying to identify which areas are working and not.
mhm.
And that starts to give the barometer of what we're going to investigate. Um, all the areas of life are overlapping, so you could heal something in one area and actually see another area flourish, or vice versa. So it's kind of like the same as like if you go to clean out a closet or clean out a garage, all the stuff's gonna end up all over the yard first because we need to assess what are we throwing away, what are we keeping, what are we transforming.
Mhm.
So you go through that inquiry, then the week two is just learning to observe the mind and the emotions and how the mind creates emotions in the body, and then what those emotions mean. And then the third week is we do the vision. So we actually create the vision, what you want. And so usually when what we don't we talk about what we don't want. It's the clues to what we do want. So we create the vision. So it's like, here's where we're going. We
Right.
mountaintop first, and then we go down into the shame the next week. And then uncover what we feel is wrong. Because usually our blocks are based, like you were saying earlier, like the lack of love.
Yes.
We have fear, mistrust, anger, grief, guilt, these things that are really heavy. Those are going to be preventing. So we have to heal that, or at least look at that. And then the fifth week is forgiveness. So we start to learn how to forgive. And the sixth week is basically love, but also healthy boundaries, because healthy boundaries are a part of building your new vision. So you have to learn what you're for and not against. Um, Mother Teresa said that she wouldn't go to an anti-war rally, but if you invited her to a march for peace, she would, because the intentions are completely different.
Correct. Yeah.
So you get intentionality, and you get your mission and your purpose and your vision. And then you're aware of where, and we're never done healing. We always spiral up in consciousness. We get better at our wound so that it's not so dominating. Maybe eventually you could heal, or maybe you have to come back another lifetime or something. But as the Buddha,
As I always say, is there's no top to the mountain, just keep climbing.
yeah. And you'll spiral around again.
Yeah. So it's, and I do believe though there's a freedom that comes in actually, Weston, that you, after going through so much and learning so much, that the pain and the joy and the fear and the love and all of those different polarized aspects become merged into, I still like to see it's this what I call the Christios, the alchemy of divine love. And I mean, obviously that's at a very high level, but I believe I've met some monks years ago. It's probably the most enlightened monk I've ever met. And I've met lots of yogis and stuff, but this old little monk, he was at a documentary for this movie called Cry of the Snow Lion, and it was based off of a true story. Some tourists in Tibet at Lhasa were filming, and there was a riot broke out between monks and some of the Tibetan protesters. And this monk in particular, the jail caught on fire with all the people inside, and he ran in and unlocked the cell and started carrying people out. Well, in the process, he got his robe was melted to his skin, and he was burnt badly. And they threw him away for 7 years in prison and tortured him and beat him. And then he got out, and then he was out for maybe like a few months, and some monks were being beaten, and he walked over to the soldiers and asked them to stop. And then he went back in for another 13. So we were in the lobby before this movie started, and I'll never forget this. This is in the early 2000. And I was with some of my friends who were very intuitive and psychic and all that. And we're all hanging out, and there's like maybe 200 people in this lobby waiting for us to be able to go into the theater. And all of a sudden I start feeling this like sorrow, or just like deep sorrow, but also like love at the same time. And it was, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but very close. Just a deep, deep compassion. And I'm asking everybody, hey, do you guys feel that? And they're like, no, I don't feel anything. And I kept, is anyone feeling this? I'm feeling this really strong emotion right now. And so I start walking around the lobby, and over in the corner, I saw a whole bunch of people, and they were crowded around this monk. He was like in his 70s, maybe, frail. I'm like, oh my God, it's him. So at the halfway through the documentary, they stop it and they bring out this monk with a translator. And I've never, ever felt so overwhelmed. I wanted to drop down and actually kiss this man's feet, because this man had endured all of these circumstances. And he talked how he almost broke and had anger towards these people, but he didn't. He kept compassion for them and love for them, because they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, he was the most amazing person I've ever come across in my life. And the emanation of compassion from this man was beyond anything that I've been around. And I've been around yogis and gurus and all different kinds of, Taoist monks, and this was the most highest level of reverence I've ever had for someone. I was just in awe. But that is something that I think when we talk about the power of love and being able to endure 20 years of torture and not fall into a space of anger, hatred, rage, you know, I don't know of anyone who's done that. I mean, I even heard the Dalai Lama talk about him once in an interview, said how this most enlightened monk, he says, he is so amazing. He says he was tortured and beaten for 20 years and never broke to anger or fear or hatred. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's just so, I mean, because that's like when you get trained to go to battle and then when you're in battle, like, it's like we do our spiritual stuff, but then when you're actually thrown into it, and I met some monks who were in, where were they? Oh, they were in China. No, Tibet. No, where were they? It was in, oh, they were in Hong Kong. It was an uprising that took place. These monks. No, it was Thailand. That's where it was. Thailand. I'm jumping all over the world right now, but they were practicing their, Buddhist practices of compassion and peace and all of that. And they said this riot broke out and how quickly they saw themselves move from that space to fighting back, to anger, to fear and fleeing, or, it was like so quick. It's like the snap of a finger. Boom. They weren't monks anymore. They were human beings just going at it. Some of them were fighting the police. Others were, in fear, and others were fleeing the scene. So it was just interesting how we do all of this spiritual training and practice, but when you get really put into the element of it, it's like it's game on. And so I think we as human beings are experiencing these events that we go through, and we try to train and prepare ourselves to the best of our ability, and then you go into something and it's like, oh, that hurt. It's like what I was mentioning earlier. It's like, ooh, the pain, woo. And I've been through lots of stuff before, but this was even more intense. So it's like, okay, so you use all of your tools and you stay in it, and you're going to wobble here, you're going to wobble there, but you just keep going with it, and holding that focus and holding that emotion to the best of your ability. And slowly it's like the stuff starts to shake off, and you get back to that true Christos. I always like to see it's this golden formulation of light that echoes this emotion that we would call unconditional love. But it's we use these words all the time, and the words even lose the feeling of that sensation. It's like it's like I said earlier, like it's like when you call the Tao, it's no longer the Tao.
Yeah.
And so we do our very best to put things together for people to try and get into, and really get into the water and swim with it. But I want to applaud you for putting your program together, and I want to know, let the audience know, what is it how can they get involved in doing a 6-week course with you if they wanted to?
Yeah, you would just go to westonhudson.com/shift, and that will lead you to the page. And there's 2 buttons. So you could book a discovery call if you just want to get on the call to make sure it's something that you're ready for, that you're right for.
Mm-hmm.
If not, there's an enroll button there. I just brought in some people, so I may wait a little bit to take the next cohort.
Okay.
But we can schedule them up if they want to do that, or we could do one-on-ones, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever they need.
Okay. So we'll put something in the video too, or the podcast, that's going to actually print that out so people can put it down. But so any words of wisdom you want to back around before we wrap it up?
Well, just to piggyback on your story about the monk, you know Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote
Mm-hmm.
Conversations with God.
Yeah.
He wrote a children's book called A Little Soul in the Sun.
Yes.
Have you read that?
Yeah, I used to read it to my kids.
Yeah, yeah. Where, darkness comes and your job is to remember like, the Dark Angel says, please remember because I'm going to be playing the part so deeply that I forget, and so these soldiers in prison, prison guards or whatever this monk is dealing with, they're trying to convince him so strong because they've forgotten who they are so strongly. And he has to keep remembering, I am the love, I am the light. And I think that's all of us. I think we come here in different capacities, but when we're born, we're so fresh and so pure. And we all have that love. And I don't mean romantic love. I mean, this is,
Mhm.
you know, and that man obviously integrated it. It wasn't something he's like just talking or lecturing on. It was so embodied that you can't. I was in the presence of Dr. David Hawkins. Do you know him?
I did. I met him too. Met Neil Donald Walsh, and this is like back in early 2000s. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he
He was a trip. David Hawkins.
too. Have a, we can do another podcast down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to.
Yeah.
We can dive in deeper.
Yeah, for sure.
We can get into some, yeah, deeper conversations about topics. But yeah, what were you going to say about David Hawkins?
I was in a lecture with him, and it wasn't what he was saying, it was just his energy. I mean, the room was pretty high anyways, because there was so many pretty high level spiritual people in the room. And another guy, Ishmael Tete, you know him.
No, I don't.
He's out of Ghana, Africa. That's probably the most powerful man I've been in the presence of. He can yeah, he's another world. But he's like the kind of they call him the twin brother of Reverend Michael Beckwith from
Okay,
the
yeah. Mhm.
but Ishmael Tete, and he's kind of undercover, like not undercover. He's very out there, but it's interesting how you discover him, but because he's not so visible.
Right.
He's not going on podcasts all the time and things like that, but you know, he's powerhouse.
He's doing the work.
If you do end up in Ghana, Africa, you should go find him.
Okay. I will see where that one goes. But yeah, we're working on going all over the world. It's going to be fun. Exciting for sure. All right, man. Well, it's been an honor having you on, Weston,
Likewise.
and we'll definitely do another one. Um, Look forward to it. And again, one more last time, where can people find you on your platform?
WestonHudson.com/shift for the online course, but there's also other stuff at WestonHudson.com, like the prayers that I do.
Okay.
I've written books that I'm in the works of putting out. So there will be more material coming down the pipeline. But
Sweet.
for now, I'm focused on the online course
Okay.
because that's just the healing component.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So this is James Walker with Surfing the Change. What's your action?